Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone had a great lunch, and everyone's having a great conference. It really is a great conference. We're covering a lot of ground, and we're going to do so today with this panel. I'm really pleased to be moderating a panel with some industry luminaries here, representing some of the world's most prominent organizations, to talk about starting your AI process. What should be the footprint in the organization of your AI efforts? And I'm pleased to be joined here by Neil Satya. Did I get that right? Satya? Satya. Excuse me. Sai Zhang. Another Sai. Sai Nara. My apologies. Sai Nara. Did I get that right? Yeah. And Rajiv. Rajiv Sambal. Okay, and let's start off with some introductions. First of all, I'm Joe McKendrick, for anybody who wants to know. Contributor to Forbes magazine. Also, I've written a number of AI pieces for Harvard Business Review. Why don't we start with
Sure. Yeah,
Neil.
I'm happy to start us off. So I'm Neil Sanyal. I'm global head of marketing for the research department at Morgan Stanley. Marketing operations and analytics is really my focus. So everything in the realm of sort of matching and distributing content to our clients.
My name is Sai. I'm heading data science team for UBS group functions, and I was focusing on using AI cloud technology, try to, help or transform our, the group function, areas. For instance, the HR, legal, finance, risk, you name it. And before that, I spent 17 years for IBM Research, where held various roles. For instance, chief technology strategist, principal research scientist, chief architect, and so on. Again, was focusing on the cloud AI technology innovation to drive the IBM business. And I think on the side, I actually have over 50 patents under my name, and also over 50 technical publications under my name, and I got a PhD from mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. Thank you.
That's a lot. That's amazing. Sai. I'm just glad that probably people can find me when they search for Sai. So I'm Sai Sharanya Nala. I'm currently working as a principal data scientist at Nike. So I lead the sport activity space within Nike. So I know Nike has there's a retail side, but I specifically focus on the fitness side of things. So which is Nike Training Club and Nike Running Club. So these two are Nike's fitness training apps. And anything that's related to AI, ML-driven features that has to be launched within these two commercial apps, that's something which is going to come out of my team. So that's on the commercial side. And on the R&D side, I lead the machine learning vertical for connected fitness. So this project is around how can we use wearable data from wearable devices like Garmin watches, healthcare data that's coming from Apple watches, and a bunch of sensor data which we could collect from underfoot sensors, and just figure out how can we use the best metrics that we can collect about an athlete's workout in terms of their running experiences, and come up with experience in terms of how can we make an athlete's workout more enjoyable regarding to running, or regarding to reducing injury while running. It's an R&D work which I'm currently leading. Pretty exciting work. I'm so glad to have this opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Hey everyone. Hi, my name is Rajiv Sambyal. I head up the product development for our digital asset custody product and some of the work we are doing in digital assets at Bank of New York Mellon. And I also lead up our advanced solutions team, where we do a lot of work in AI and machine learning. So we have a lot of traditional use cases in finance and all, but what we are also exploring and are excited about is exploring the intersection between digital assets and machine learning. There's tons of data on blockchain and lots to explore there. So we are doing a lot of work over there.
Okay, great. We have 3 banks and a sportswear company. So it sounds like the name of a movie, right? Okay, fantastic. Well, let's talk about, as mentioned in the title of the session, we're talking about small wins with AI, the importance of small wins. So what do we mean by small wins? Neil, let's start it off. What's your definition of a small win in AI, versus a big bang or a great victory or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is about sort of, when I think about it, is about what can you do easily. And I think that depends a lot on your resources and about where you're at and how much your company's bought into your beliefs and bought into what you're trying to do, your seniority level, et cetera. So I think what's small for one group might not be small for another group, or what's big for one group may not be big for the other. And I think it's different too on the, one of the things I've found over the years is the difference between what's big on an IT side versus what's big from a business impact side. There may be a lot of things that are technically challenging, but may not have hardly any surface value for the business. They may need to do, a systems upgrade behind the scenes, or a server upgrade or something like that, but the business may not give credit for that. And so I think when you're trying to pick your small wins or what's obtainable in your planning sessions, I think a lot of it's about sort of what resources do you have at your disposal, what are you able to do realistically in that timeline, and what will actually surprise and wow managers or people that you're trying to impress, whether it be clients or whether it be managers. And usually if you can get clients to be impressed, your managers will be too. So that's what I would sort of say about how I think about small wins, is just sort of trying to grab bite-sized pieces that are realistic given what resources I have. Sometimes I have more resources and sometimes I have less, but it's sort of having a future vision of how you're going to connect those dots, of lots of small wins that I would say putting that together makes for a good final product that tries to wow people.
Sai?
I think maybe from my perspective, small maybe means something which incremental improvement. That could be, it also could be some, let's say the advance on the technology side, like for instance, the algorithm, in the past that's one model, then another model is performing better. So that could be, technical side, the small wins. If you need to start something new, it could be means that something smaller scope to begin with, whether it's the in the business, let's say now I'm serving for one business divisions. Later on, you can grow into much bigger. So I think small can define in different way, but I think at the end of the day, I would say it's something where whether technology-wise you have some small, you have improvement, or business side you have some value generated. But hopefully it can really lead to much bigger expansion in the future. Yeah.
According to me, a small win would be something to firstly figure out, have the bigger vision in place, and then in your bigger vision, we need to we follow the strategy of identify the different jobs to be done, make sure you know your customer segments, the customer needs, and what are the use cases that you need to build out, things starting from the big picture needs to the granular needs. And once you have that identified, then it's all about implementing the first thing in the right way as well. And in order to do it the right way, I think we should just start with smaller steps. So that's something, being able to implement and test out, doing MVT, testing with the segment users and making sure that you are able to get the feedback, and you can also work on improvements based on the need, based on the feedback you get from your customers, and then improvising on top of it. So gradually, iteratively, delivering the product is something which I see as a small win. And once we gain the trust from the customers and we start learning things about the customers, I think we can start, increasing or putting together the entire building block that's needed for our bigger vision. yeah, that's something.
Yeah,
Rajiv?
look, I think like it's the same, like what Neil touched on it, right? So it's bite-sized increments, and it depends upon where you are in your journey, right, of AI machine learning. People who are starting small or starting new, right? You don't want to be putting in a $20 million budget and get GPUs, TPUs, and whole lots of infrastructure, right? And when you don't have business cases to solve for, right? And also, if you are like far along in your journey, like what is your business case, right? Like, do you want to show the stakeholders the benefit of the solution, like incrementally? I don't know, you don't want to go in a 5-year plan, right, with implementing something with, you know, the technology has shifted and the requirements have shifted year 2, right? So that's why I think it really depends upon where you are in your journey, and you take those bite-sized increments and deliver it incrementally, right? I mean, agile is not just a buzzword, right? It's implemented across the board. So just deliver, you know, what is needed.
Great, great. If you're familiar with Tom Peters, who's written a lot of management work, in his initial work in Search of Excellence, he talked about skunkworks. I think it was Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer, had the skunkworks, you know, kind of independent from the main organization, perhaps a small group that was tasked with, you know, just going with it, taking their ideas and running with them, independent of management interference, at least initially. Let's start with Sai Sharan. You talked about some of the work at Nike a little bit a few moments ago. Did that start off as independent from these ideas from the mainstream business?
Yeah. So so just trying to keep it as standardized, as high level as possible without giving out the details. But within Nike, we have something called as there's a startup called Valiant Labs within Nike. So Nike does encourage, so we have entrepreneur in residences. They're essentially like CEOs of that particular division. So they encourage employees to like pitch out ideas, and once that idea is getting the traction and has leadership alignment, then there's budgeting given to that particular project, and this is one such initiative which I was talking about. So on a quarterly basis, we'll have like steer committee meetings. We wanted to make sure that we deliver progress at every quarter to get that trust from the leadership that we are going in the right direction. And given a lot of products which we wanted to build out needs a lot of alignment across multiple organizations. Like when I talk about we wanted to build an experience for reducing probably injuries for a particular athlete. It's not just around the technical details, it's also around the sports science component of it, understanding, analyzing data that's coming from a bunch of these sensors, and there's a lot of research back end in terms of figuring out, you know, how can we identify symmetry between when somebody's like running, what is the symmetry, how is the balance, and coming up with the baselining metrics like when somebody is like doing a squat, whether somebody is like running, whether somebody is doing a two-legged jump, can we identify balance from it? And what is that balance looking like? And also a lot of these things shouldn't be prescriptive. So we wanted to like put in a way that it's in a format which is helpful for the users, but also like not forcing them into a certain way or something. So there's not just the technical aspect, but also the sports science component associated with it. And then there's a hardware requirement because we would be like trying to gather data from sensors and wearable devices. And that's a whole new set of org that we work with. And just getting a buy-in, just getting the alignment across. And given this is more of an R&D aspect, we wanted to test it on a limited set of population. So it's around how shall we come up with this whole new app where we want to like run our tests with a limited set of population and gather feedback, and when we are confident enough that this is a product which can be commercialized, that's when it goes into these commercial apps like NTC and NRC. But yeah, all of these things are some of the considerations.
So it sounds like a very important role, corporate culture. right? That supports and sustains these efforts and helps the
Yeah.
process move forward.
Yeah.
And our banking folks, does that happen in the banking world where you have little independent spin-offs that start the process rolling, that start the innovation rolling? Anybody
Yeah.
want to tackle that?
I'm happy to, if others want to jump in, but absolutely. I think I work within the research department and the business side, and we have very limited budgets compared to probably other parts of Morgan Stanley that are closer to clients and more well-funded. And we're constantly sort of trying to do more with less. So proof of concepts I found is a very impactful way of getting management's attention of sort of what technology can bring to bear. Wanting to put advertisements on the sides of our research reports and being able to say, oh, if you like this, you'll probably like this content as well. And those sort of recommendation engine problems that we've all talked about and interest neighborhood problems, et cetera. So those are the types of things that I can put it on a slide 20 times and present it to senior people and say, hey, you're missing all these opportunities for people to be more engaged with our content. But until you actually show them, like, hey, you clicked on this and your page is different than hers and different than his, and all of a sudden they're like, wow, we can do this? And it's like, yes, that's what's been in the slides for several quarters. So proof of concepts, and it can be super bare bones, but it's way more effective than slide presentations, because trying to show what you're able to do, even in very small scales, is extremely impactful. So that's been my sort of way of trying to infiltrate and get people to listen and understand the opportunities that are available because of technology changes. So skunkworks is actually a term we throw around a lot in our group. It's like, if we're not, I often say, like, if we're not doing it, no one's going to do it. Like, we got to create it within this group. So.
I think talk about the UBS experience. So we do have hackathon. The firm-wide hackathon is really, you can consider it's a 2 days effort where you can form different topics, different teams coming together just to hack on small problem. So as outcome, some problem is actually getting to roll up as more concrete project initiative. So that's firm-wide. That's also running on different the divisions as well. So that's just one format as a firm-wide. But I personally think that every organization has the opportunity to come up with new ideas, innovations, build their POC, proof of concept, doing the pilot, and to convince the management this is the right thing to do, and also invest on the long-term initiative, become official, and going forward. So I think that's my experience. So, but of course, I from IBM research never been shy of innovation opportunities there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Rajiv, how's it?
Yeah, I think the only, I don't have a team of skunks, right? But we do a lot of these. So hackathons, design thinking sessions, a lot of so all of this is prevalent. I think the one thing which we make sure that we do is we time bound everything, right? So it cannot be something which just goes on and on for weeks, months, and something just people are spinning wheels. So the frame. So we have a framework. We said that okay, you have 4 to 6 weeks of exploration, right? Like if there is an idea, come up with an idea, put together a business case, but you got to limit that within this time period. And after that, we see what comes out of it, right? So after 4 or 6 weeks, if you think that okay, the idea either there is an issue technically, or there's an issue in the data, or there's an issue in the business concept itself, so then you kind of shut it down and then move on, right? So I think at least we have innovation embedded, right, in our overall business, and it helps kind of generate new ideas and also have the startup culture of you fail fast and move on, right? Get to the next idea.
And we'll start with you, Rajiv, for the next question. Can you cite an example of a small win type of project that really eventually bore fruit?
Yeah, I think at least most of the projects which we do, we start small, right? So I can one of the projects we recently delivered, and I was talking about it yesterday also, that we did some fee predictions. Like we have a sec lending division, right, where our front desk actually lends out the securities. People who are in finance, they might understand what sec lending is or securities lending is. Basically, you have client client positions or client holdings, and you can lend out those securities out of the market, and you can generate some income for the clients also as well, and charge some fee on top of it. So long story short, actually, you optimize the fee at which you lend, right? So, and there's a huge market to that. It's a global market, right? So the way we started with it, you take a basket of securities and see how the modeling works, right? Like, does it work? Does it impact? Like, is it actually, you back test it last 5, 6, 10 years, like do some shock testing. And so that's how you start small, right? You incrementally increase the basket size and see if it is working, right? Is it actually generating the returns we want, right? So if it is not, so you don't want to start with a basket of 10,000 securities and go on and say, okay, nothing works after 7 months, right? So that's just one example of how we started small, but every project starts like that, right? So at least the way we operate or we do it, like we don't embark on a 6-year journey, right? Saying that, okay, we'll deliver it to you 2 years later, right? Like, so you do incremental steps and deliver that to business, right? And that's how projects are successful most of the times, right? So you get into this iterative loop, continuous build loop, and get feedback.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Sai, Nike.
Yeah, I think probably I'm just going to give an example while I was working at American Express. So at Amex, a couple of years back, we've launched a product called Amex Personal Loans. So when we were having this discussion about launching this particular product, I was sitting on the consumer data science team. So we were basically responsible for identifying customers who would be more likely to actually accept the personal loan. So in order to do that, we have to like go with the data we currently have in terms of the transaction data, which we were able to collect with the same set of users which we had. So we were trying to identify patterns like, hey, has somebody made a really huge purchase above a threshold as, certain set of thousands of dollars, or has somebody been doing a lot of furniture shopping? Probably it's time they might have, probably bought a home, or probably we were also looking for a bunch of very interesting signs from the data, and we were like trying to predict, come up with probably this might be a transaction or a person who would be more likely to accept this personal loan. So we were able to first build out a response model, and we were able to like test out with a certain set of population when personal loans was launched for a certain set of customers. We have seen that the response modeling results were pretty accurate when we have run our campaigns. When we went across and looked at the post-campaign analysis, the results were pretty promising. So that's how I started off with building response models for one product, which was personal loans, and within one channel, which was email. Later, we've blown it up to a bunch of several different channels, like online, phone call, and not only that, so once we have seen the success and we already were able to like get an idea in terms of how how can response modeling be useful for targeting and marketing, we've then actually so our team was responsible for consumer targeting. So anybody who is already an Amex card member, there are a bunch of offers like upgrades, cross-sell, supplementary cards. So I was able to build out 83 different models. It was covering all sorts of credit cards, charge cards, which Amex has, and so we've tested out with personal loans, and we've blown up incrementally, and then we were able to like build a platform which was hosting 83 different response modeling models, and that was our very first next gen framework which we were able to build. So yeah, like I think getting it out the door, the first one was very difficult because we had to like go through a bunch of approvals and regulatory compliance and a bunch of documentation, a lot of questions to answer in terms of why is the model doing a certain way, what are the features that went into it, why are you using XYZ feature, and how are you using it. And once we were able to cross the first hurdle, the next ones were like pretty easy lift. Yeah, that's my experience.
Great.
So maybe I wanted to approach a different perspective, because I think a lot of initiatives starting from small, right? The incremental steps or the smaller scale. But I would say at a very early stage, the bigger opportunity is actually ahead of you. It's not because I starting small, meaning this is my narrow focus and not knowing what's outside this scope. So I would say it's I just give one example. So last year we did IT optimization. So as a firm, financial firm, you typically spend like 2% of your revenue just based for your infrastructure, right? That's how much you're spending have. And so we just did a data analysis across group functions. We find out it's extremely underutilized, yeah? So of course, when we started the journey, say, hey, let's help our application owner to drive down their cost, we started with one application as the pilot, right? But we know opportunity is many, $1 million, ahead of us. But we started with the small applications. We made it successful. We also, and we went ahead to, broaden across different applications in the divisions. But next journey we're going to embarking on is to the whole firm. So I think is always keep in mind, starting something small doesn't mean you don't know there's huge opportunity ahead of you. Always keep that in mind. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, and I think playing off of what Sai is saying, I think it's interesting too. I think as I think about like a portfolio of experiments that we're sort of running at any given time, we're always sort of, I mean, I don't do this perfectly, but I'm always trying to have some sort of big win that people are excited about and are excited and talking about. And then behind the scenes, there's always some other things that are like the building blocks, right? And those building blocks, I'm not going to go tell the senior most managers, oh, we've done this thing that's going to eventually, I'm going to pair it with these 4 other things, and someday that's going to be a big win, I think. And those I don't even shine a light on because I know we're not ready yet. It's not prime time. We haven't, it's going to take 4 more components and 3 more models and 4 more data attributes and a matching engine for this to actually work. And so I'm not going to even talk about that in the meeting because that's not what's going to get people excited. I'm going to talk about the thing that we did roll out recently that has taken 3 years to get to fruition, but they don't really realize it's taken 3 years because we just started talking about it 6 months ago. But we've been building for 3 years. And so that's the kind of thing. I think it's about managing expectations and taking, one thing I would say, because I talked earlier about sort of doing everything on a shoestring budget and sort of making do with what you get, I would say that 2 things really quickly. One, that the relationship with the IT department and those that are able to help you is extremely important because the ability for them to go sort of above and beyond for you and that willingness that like if they have the incremental Friday afternoon where they don't have something else to do and they're willing to like put in that effort to help you get to the grand vision eventually, those Friday afternoons add up, right? Or that incremental hour, those add up. And so you'd be amazed what you're able to do with 6 months of those or a year of those. And so that's one thing I would say is that, those relationships are really important, getting people to buy into sort of where you're headed. And then 2, I would say it's also really important to think about sort of how you structure that map, right? Here's where I'm going, here's the incremental sort of wins along the way. Maybe if some of the things are big enough, maybe you do bring them up to management. And try to shine a light on sort of here's where we're going, here's our incremental, here's how far we've gotten. But I think it's sort of case by case depending on sort of how far along you are. But yeah, it's almost never, we're going to do this amazing thing from start to finish. Are you in? It's going to take 4 years because no one will be in. But in reality, that's sort of what's happening behind the scenes constantly. You're sort of taking whatever you can scrap together to start the project, whether there's a ton of buy-in yet or not, and then iterating quickly, as he mentioned earlier. If you're going to fail, try to figure out early in year 1, is this even going to work? Yeah. Yeah,
and I imagine, especially over the past couple of years, AI has become a big hot thing. The CEOs and the CFOs and CIOs are, they're reading the trade press, they're reading Forbes, and gee, we want to be this way too. We want to be data-driven, and we want to go through this digital transformation and know what the customer's thinking before they even think it. Is there a case of expectations being too high, and that's putting pressure on your departments, your efforts? Anyone?
I
Yeah.
Talk about it because I joined UBS last year just for this reason, because they know AI and the data, they're cool. They want to build a data science team. It doesn't mean they know what data science team should be doing. So I was hired for that purpose. Is really, starting from scratch, build the data science, the mission, the team, and also pipeline use cases and so on. So I think that's one perspective. People know it's cool. It takes time and journey to figure out what kind of value can bring back to you, right? So that's one thing. I think the another perspective is also when people are looking at the AI, they always think about it's just some kind of cool models, you're gonna run behind the curtain, and also you spend a lot of time just doing the modeling and so on. But I would say it's reality is that we spend a lot of time, majority of time just crunching the data, right? And modeling is easier part if my data is getting right. So I think that's another angle of this. So just wanted to share. Yeah.
Look, I think the only thing I'll add is education. It's whether it's senior execs, business in general, company in general, groups in general, right? So the education aspect to it it's constant, right? I think there is a perception that AI or machine learning is not a panacea for every pain you have, right? So that's why the education is important, right? So I think, and that's what we do, right? So whether it is through town halls, through sessions, like we have AI meetups internal and things like that, where you actually try to tell what is possible and what is not possible, and where you apply AI or where you do not apply AI, it's an application development problem, right? And you set the expectations, you constantly calibrate, right? The pressure is always there, right? So as I said, the expectations are high from AI and machine learning, especially when every second day news come out like ChatGPT. Okay, when am I getting the ChatGPT and automatic responses and all that? So that's how you start setting the expectations, right? What is possible and where the technology is and what can we deliver, and that's where education, I think, is a crucial element to that.
And Rajiv, you just made a great point. Calling it AI, maybe is it advisable that maybe not call it AI, call it an initiative to predict what customers call it anything, call it something else.
right. No, you're right.
Basically, something you sell to the CEO.
You're right. I think what you're not selling, at least the way we approach it, I approach it, and the company in general. So we are not selling AI, right? You're trying to solve business problems. What you're trying to sell is that how do you solve business problems, right? Sometimes it's a combination of machine learning, RPA, application development. So at least I've never built a solution where I take the models, deploy it, and then they run independently on their own, right? There's a whole solution architecture which goes along with it. There's a workflow component that goes along with it, right? So that's where technology, InfoSec, data architecture, all of these come along, right? So at least, I can't think of any, I've gone in front, right, of CI or anyone and said that, okay, here's the AI, right? So it's going to solve all your problems, right? So what you're trying to solve for is the business problems. The moment you start selling AI, I think most of the times those projects fail, right, if you're not solving a business problem.
Yeah, like what Rajiv mentioned, it's about education as well, because oftentimes I've seen the data scientist team actually build out models, but when it comes down to putting in production or getting a buy-in from your product team, that's where they kind of get stuck, because that's where we need to get alignment from everyone, make sure we are hitting our targets, make sure the ML solution is actually helping out the problem which the product team or which we're trying to achieve. So that's something which I found has to be aligned, and education across different cross organizations is necessary. I just had another thought in my mind, and I think I'm just going to pass it.
Yeah. I'm happy to jump on that. So you mentioned earlier, does the word AI, does that make sense to C-suite, and do they understand? I've been told to use the word algorithms. And that works better, supposedly. So I don't know if that helps. But I always say, we've come up with an interesting algorithm to solve this. And they're like, oh. And so algorithms is a term we use a lot, whether it's AI, machine learning, matching engines, all kind of algorithm. It's an algorithm. Oh, okay. So that's what we say internally a lot of times. And then two, I think, I think it's about figuring out what you can get them on board with, and sort of, it's going to vary depending on your manager about the appetite, right, or the C-suite, the boards, whoever you're sort of presenting to, their appetite for wanting to understand the AI. Like some people are super excited, they're really interested in it, they want to understand sort of mechanism, how's it working, and then others obviously have very little interest and they just want to know that it's working. But I think to something Rajiv said earlier, it was just about if you're solving the business need, that's how I've always found that you can get the buy-in, right? And something I said earlier around like, if the client is happy, management will be happy. And so like that's always been my end goal is like, can I make them excited about what we're doing? Can I show they're gonna, start to interact with our content a lot more, engage with our analysts a lot more. If I can get to the end user and get them bought in, nobody in between here and the end user is going to have much say because they've already voted, right? They voted with their business, they voted with their feedback mechanisms. So your feedback mechanisms will be different in each, everybody's business is different, but if you can get to that end user and get them excited about what you're doing and get some of that to filter back in, it doesn't matter sort of who's standing in the way. They'll eventually have to go along because it's working.
Okay, great. We're actually running low on time. Wanted to see if there's any questions for our panelists from the audience. We've got 3 banks and a sportswear company here, so ready to answer your questions about their implementations and what it took to sell AI to the business, bring AI to their businesses. Any questions? Anybody?
They're very thorough.
Yeah, very thorough.
Hi, how's it going? My name's Brooke. I had a question for Neil. I think you mentioned kind of hiding stuff until it's like ready for the prime time. How do you manage that with like still building excitement and like not losing all your investment or losing all that build up?
Yeah, and hiding is the wrong word. I mean, that's friends and family here. But I think it's a matter of, listen, it depends. Different companies work different ways, but a lot of times, at least in where we work, there's a series of meetings that you can have with management, right? And at different times, you can put your hand up and say, I want to be in that meeting, or you can say, maybe not this week, how about next week, how about next month? And so I think it depends on sort of how aggressively do you put your hand up and how active do you want to be in that, right? And how often do you shine the light on the projects? And sometimes you shine the light aggressively when you've got big wins, when you have finally getting close to fruition and you have been able to pull things off. And then other times, the thing that you've been able to do in the last month is small and the senior people won't be excited about it because it doesn't solve the need yet. And it's 5 steps from solving the need. And they'll be like, that's great. Keep working. Like it took a long time to realize that I needed enough things in the portfolio that I always had something to shine the light on. Like, hey, this went live. Isn't that awesome? Okay, let's not talk about the one that's going to take another 6 months to build. We are working on it. If you want to talk about what's everything in the portfolio, we'll do that. They never ask for that. They just keep getting excited about the win that just happened. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's sort of trying to keep things moving. You just keep all the, I use the analogy of the plate spinning. I keep all the plates spinning. Some plates are, very close for people to be excited the plate's spinning, and then others, they haven't even realized that there's a plate yet. But I'm already trying to spin it. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Yeah. I thought he was going to be a Nike plant. I thought he was going in for the Nike question.
Anybody else? Okay, great. If there's no more questions, thank you to our esteemed panelists, Neil, Sai, Regine. They did a great job.